Hello everyone and welcome to our event, Eyes on Activism, celebrating social change in Israel through the visual arts. In case you're wondering, our group, the people that put this on for you guys, are Kesher Enoshi, Progressives for Activism in Israel. That's what you signed the email list for. So we'll talk a little bit more about that after the presentation. And we want to preface this by saying a great, big, rousing thank you to FSM for letting us do this at their part of their educational series. And so now I'll present our speaker. Our speaker is Nili Yosha. She's an Israeli-American photographer. She splits her time between here and Israel. Her work that she's going to present today is called My Tel Aviv. It's about, in it she depicts, as you guys saw some of the pictures up there, she depicts some of her impressions of Tel Aviv, of the Tel Aviv that most tourists don't see. She is a Haas Koshland Fellow. She got this prize just recently. She's going to be doing some things next year in Israel. So this is a good beginning for her. I'm glad that we got to do this with her. And so without further ado, I'd like to introduce Nili Yosha, my good friend.
Thanks for coming, guys. Itamar was very pissed off at the limited, polarized, and shallow avenues that people have to relate to Israel around here. And he was just so upset. He said, well, do something about it. 2-3 weeks later, he had started this organization and was putting on an event and wanted to know if I knew somebody that makes work in and about Israel that will be in the Bay Area on May 9th. I said that I was the only one that I could think of, and, and here we are. So I will, I said most of everything that I was going to say, so I'll show you some pictures. And if you have any questions at the end, we'll do that at the end. Does this look familiar to anyone? Was anybody alive when the first man landed on the moon? For all we know, this was taken in a back lot in Hollywood. I've seen Wag the Dog. I know how these things work. I don't know. Big guy in a suit. Does this look familiar to anyone? Anybody want to take a guess what this is?
Hiroshima.
There you go. Was anybody alive when that happened? I see a picture of smoke. It doesn't evoke any of the horror of what actually happened when that bomb went off. This picture, even if you don't know what it is, weren't there, and don't know the context, it immediately evokes the weight of the world that is on this kid's shoulder and all the fear that he feels. This is the Warsaw Ghetto. And the difference between this picture and the ones before is that this is street photography. The street is familiar to all of us, is somewhere where we all exist and interact. The photographer takes pictures at eye level, and he was there. You feel like you are there as well, and that's the strength of street photography. And what makes a photo timeless is that it doesn't matter that this is Vietnam and what's happening. You feel for the people in the photograph, and you will feel for them no matter what and whenever you see it. It's the 75th anniversary of the New Deal this year, and we desperately need another New Deal this year as well. But again, these pictures show you what these people are feeling. And feeling for people is the first step in doing something else. So let's move to Tel Aviv. Like Eyal said, my project, which I call My Tel Aviv, is a answer to what we see of Israel is usually what we see on the news. Wars, bombs, lots of religious fanaticism, nothing that we can relate to, not enough human stories. I grew up in Tel Aviv, and I've been going back over the summers and taking pictures. I have the advantage of not living there right now, so I can look at my hometown with some fresh eyes. I can notice things that people that live there don't notice, just like people that live here don't notice some of the problems that are painfully obvious to anyone stepping in from the outside for a moment. Oh my God, there's so many homeless people in San Francisco. What's up with that? You know? So I'm taking that fresh perspective of Tel Aviv and bringing it here because we don't see enough. We don't see enough of Israel. We hear about it endlessly and we don't really see anything. So this is the beach. A lot of Tel Aviv is a coastal town and a lot of everything happens on the beach. Friday afternoons, all the stores shut down, and that's where everybody goes to hang out. It's a bit crowded for me, so last time I was there, I decided to go a little further south towards Jaffa. Jaffa is one of the oldest port towns in the world, and it shares the same municipality with Tel Aviv. It doesn't share all of the funding. Most of the Israeli Arabs that live in that area live in Jaffa, not in Tel Aviv. So I hung out there. See, there's a little mosque. We know we're in Jaffa. And I saw these people, and I took their picture. First of all, I was surprised that they let me take their picture. I've gotten kicked out of public beaches in the U.S. for just not even for taking pictures of the kids, just for having it around the children. Everybody's afraid of a lawsuit, and and I was chased off. Here, nobody has a problem. They're happy to have their picture taken. In fact, this guy was playing with the kids for over an hour before the kids' parents showed up. They weren't even related, total stranger, and nobody minded. It's great. This is more Jaffa. Like we see, it retains some of the old ways and has some of the new as well. This one's Tel Aviv. Although you won't really see it from this picture, it's a thriving metropolis with a great art scene. And one of the things you see is on the walls. Everything is out there in Israel. Everybody says what they think, says what they feel. Everybody's always hot and angry and has a lot to say, and some of that expression is on the walls. This is across the street from my favorite bar. I thought I discovered it. It was my parents' favorite bar as well. And it's the only bar that refuses to close on Yom Kippur. They get a fine, they pay it, they stay open, everybody's happy. Any Arab speakers? Anybody know what Dir Balak means? Itmal, do you know?
Be careful.
Beware. Why it says beware in English on a store in Tel Aviv, I don't know, but beware. There's this sense of foreboding in Israel at all times, even in Tel Aviv, where you can ignore what happens and you don't have a choice but to ignore it sometimes. But there's always a sense of foreboding. There's the situation. That's what it's called. We can't even name all the issues that are going on, some of which you can see outside in the different artwork that people have done. Some sort of situation is going on, and be careful. Homelessness is a new issue in Israel. It was started as a socialist country, and until I moved to Los Angeles and saw people on the streets like garbage, I didn't know that such a thing even exists. And now coming back, you see more and more people on the streets. This was taken in a daycare for children of illegal immigrants. They have to work long hours, and this daycare was one room. It was tiny, and there were 20 kids in there that spend 8-10 hours a day in there. A room full of cribs and no backyard, 2 windows. Bad news. And the fact that people have it worse off than people in Israel, that they will come to Israel to work as illegal immigrants, is really scary. And people in Israel, instead of being angry at all the illegal immigrants, should kind of get some perspective and realize that their situation is not the worst one that exists. People actually will come and live as illegals in Israel to make their own situation better. Very scary. Not as scary as the fact that in 1998, I was in a political youth group fighting to get Bibi Netanyahu out of office. He was up against Ehud Barak. We were flyering and doing everything that we could, and he got, and Barak got elected. In the next elections, guess who's running? Bibi Netanyahu and Ehud Barak. 10 years have gone by, and the same people are running. Jews have been under foreign occupation for most of their existence, and having their own state is a new concept, and it's hard to get used to. It's hard to break the habit of resisting the government that you're under, right? Jews have a long history of fighting against their foreign occupiers, and all of a sudden, we're the ones in charge. So law and order is something we're all trying to get used to. I remember going to the bank, and there was this girl arguing with the teller because she didn't have her ID, and so he didn't want to give her money, you know? She's like, I've been going to this bank for 20 years. What do you mean I need my ID? Let me find that teller that knows me, you know? So basic things like, it's charming. I love it. I hope it doesn't change. So some people work as a cop, some people work at the market selling vegetables. The market's closed Friday afternoon, and this may look like garbage, but the way I see it, it's a deep understanding of Leviticus and of the laws that we've had for thousands of years, saying that the gleaning laws, saying that you don't harvest your field all the way. You leave 10% of it for travelers and for poor people. And you can see that, that attitude on the street. They leave the vegetables out, and people that can't afford to buy them take them. It's not all bad. We have kids out on the street playing music. I sent this out as my New Year's card, and 3 different people from 2 different countries said that they know this piano player. Is anybody here related to this kid? This is Rothschild Boulevard. It's a historic preserve for Bauhaus architecture, if anybody's into that. Back to the beach. The tall building in the background used to be the tallest building in the Middle East. It's maybe 30 stories. Kid that played in the sand when he was a kid, grew up and keeps playing in the sand. This is them repaving the road, and there's that same building in the background again. And I was just hanging out with my camera, and he posed for me. Again, people are happy to get their picture taken. Any Hebrew school grads that want to read this? Die hard is dying to live, is how they translated it here. So this is a work in progress. It's only what I've managed to shoot over the last few summers. Like Eyal said, I just got a grant to go and spend a year there and really round out the project and spend more time just shooting and not waste half of my time, you know, seeing family and things like that. So I have an opportunity to work, and hopefully next time we meet, I'll have a big body of work to show you. What I want to show you next is some pictures from the United States. So this fresh perspective that I was telling you is something that is not only applicable to Israel. Anywhere you go, you see what's going on. I was a political activist in Israel, and I thought when I moved to the States, that's it, I'm done. I don't have to worry, I don't have to care, it's not my problem, it's not my country. But instantly, you see the problems that exist in your new community, and you have to act. Everybody's Jewish in Israel, but you come to the States and you realize that racism really is a huge problem, and people still are very, very divided. And that just like back home, people turn away and pretend to ignore the problems that are so obviously in front of them. And so locally here in San Francisco, I work with the Western Regional Advocacy Project. It's a group that's committed to ending homelessness and making sure that everybody's civil rights are taken care of. They used this for their campaign about not housing, their civil rights campaign. The guy called me and said that they want to put homeless kids in separate schools than regular kids. And that immediately made me think of Norman Rockwell's painting, which is probably based on a street photograph. And the go home, the homeless go home is something I took from Israel. You could see, the Arabs go home and Jews go home. You could see that written on the walls. Nobody's going anywhere. Nobody has another home to go to, and we all have to solve our problems right here. And so that's why I made this piece. Now for the artistic part of the talk. I wanted to introduce you to Alex Livak, who is my favorite street photographer. He's been doing this for 40 years. He's a photographer for Haaretz newspaper. There are only 3 papers in Israel, and Haaretz is the good one. He has a weekly photograph. You can check it out online. And he takes pictures on the streets, and he doesn't judge. He just shows you the weird reality that we exist in. He told me that when he was a kid, he and his buddy would, boys, they go and they dig in the sand, and his friend would collect nuts and bolts and things, and he would collect weird stuff that he would find. Now that they're grown up, his friend's a mechanic, and he's a photographer collecting images of weird things that he finds, like Spider-Man taking a leak. He lives in Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. Can you guess which one this is? This one's Jerusalem. So is this. I love it because you don't just do a double take when you look at his pictures, you do a triple take. I don't know how he does it, how he finds it. I had the privilege of walking around with him one afternoon, and we shot together, which I learned more than in my $50,000 art school education. And there was something interesting, and I kind of hesitated, and he turned to me and he was like, "Do you get embarrassed taking pictures of people?" I said, "Yes." He's like, "Me too." He's 60, he's been doing this forever. This is Purim in Jerusalem in 95, I think. Only one of them is dressed up. Just another day. This is the road from Jerusalem to Hebron, I think. This is Bethlehem. It's just the situation, You gotta get a tan. Okay, so much for art, but what about activism? Photos are a good first step. It shows you something that you haven't seen before. It gets you a little bit closer. Activism is not limited to Israel or anything like that. It's not limited to photographs. Like Itamar, you can start a student group, you can take pictures, you can get involved with a million things or start something new. It's very easy. It's something that, have a conversation, write a letter, you know? So I hope that when you leave here, you too will in your work that you do with Kesher Enoshi, doing things in Israel, you have a fresh perspective on these problems that exist. You can learn about them and offer a solution that the people that are stuck in the shit can't think about. The work with Israel is not limited to giving money to the people, the trees. What are they called? Keren Kayemet?
Plant trees.
So there's a lot of things you can do. There are a lot of things that are already out there, and there are all the things that are in your brain. They try to tell us that you're with us or against us, which means that you're with them or against them, and it doesn't have to be like that. Unfortunately, the only time I've ever had lunch with a Palestinian is in a coffee shop in San Francisco. We're lucky to be in Berkeley with a lot of different people from a lot of different places. So go out and make a friend, go see a movie about a place that's too depressing to think about but is important to learn about. All of these things. Talk to Itamar, I'm sure he has a lot of ideas. That's it, if you have any questions.
Alright, so if anybody has any questions for Nili, I'm sure she'd be happy to answer them. Anything specific to what she said, or anything about art or activism or not.
Do you have the question first? The microphone?
Yeah. Okay. Does anybody have any questions? You think
Can you describe the picture this land was made for you and me? Like summarize the description that we have outside. Maybe some people didn't read it.
Yeah. That one.
Yeah.
Arabs are people too. They play with their children in the sand, just like Jewish people and just like every other people. These are people that live in Jaffa. Jaffa has been taken over by everyone. I can't remember the entire history that I gave. You can look at it outside, but started with the pharaohs in Egypt. Napoleon was there for a while. The Ottomans came. The British came. The IDF came. And in 2001, the second intifada started. And unlike the first intifada, this time the Israeli Arabs participated and rioted and threw stones out of solidarity with the Palestinians. And since then, they've been considered traitors in Israel. Up until then, they were just second-class citizens. Now they're a dangerous enemy living among us. And my contribution is, look, they're people too. It's very sad that that's the level of discourse, but they do live there, and they are citizens, and they're good people. That's all I was trying to say.
Are there any other questions?
How long have you lived in the U.S. and do you do any activism in the U.S.?
I've been here for the last 6 years, and when I was a little kid, we lived here for a few years. My parents make movies, so we moved to Hollywood, but they make movies about peace and social justice, so we left Hollywood, and now they're back in Tel Aviv making movies about Israel. So I've been here for 6 years, and yes, the most important thing I do is teach kids. I work with whatever community I live in. I've lived in Portland and San Francisco and Los Angeles, and I work with kids because art and education are the same thing, right? You're trying to send a message to people, and when you teach, you have a captive audience, and you can talk to them, and you learn just as much as you teach, and that's the main way. Then it also pays the bills, so you can, do this kind of work. The group that I'm working with is the Western Regional Advocacy Project, as I said, and the way I got involved with them was walking through the mission, and I saw a poster in a window that grabbed me so deeply. The poor guy that made my coffee, I'm like, who made this? Where can I find them? Luckily, they were right next door, and I went up there, and they didn't give me the guy's email, but I left my information, and he contacted me a few months later, and that's when I did the Homeless Go Home piece for them. They had a campaign about housing rights, again, very basic, just to kind of educate people about where the money goes, and how tax breaks are given to second and third home buyers, but the affordable housing budget is being cut and slashed, and they are very aware of incorporating art into their messages. So they have posters. You can see them in Rasputin down on Telegraph. There are 4 or 5 posters in the window. Just like I got a grant from the Haas family, they're getting a grant from the Haas family and are going to do another run this summer. So hopefully you'll see mine in the window along with it. So those are some ways I'm active.
I have a question.
There's one over there.
Oh, there's a question there? All right.
You can go ahead.
No, you go first.
So obviously, the pictures that you take are meant to capture some sort of reality. Are you ever afraid that, or I suppose, well, I guess there's a tendency to take pictures and use them and utilize them and appropriate them to say what you want to say, or for people to take them and appropriate them and say what they want to say rather than what you want to capture. And that's something that can be said for a lot of the pictures in your exhibition, a lot of the pictures that are outside as sort of perhaps blanket statements or simplified statements. So how do you is that something that ever worries you, or how do you deal with that?
My goal is very humble at this point. It really is just to show my perception of Tel Aviv, what I see from walking around in the streets, what I notice, what catches my eye. The more time I will spend there, the more well-rounded the project will be. But that's exactly what art is for. You don't own your message. You send it out there, and the more people reinterpret it and use it, the better. As long as it gets people thinking. This and any other photo is not or any other work of art is not an end product. It's the beginning of something, the beginning of a dialogue, the beginning of, if you got somebody to think about something enough to use it, then you're doing good.
You have a question, Maria?
You're talking about different Israel than I am. Wouldn't have to tell my Israeli friends that Arabs are people too. They work with them and they go to school with them and they, everything. And on Jewish holidays, they go to their towns so that they can have fun because everything's closed in the Jewish towns.
Mm-hmm.
So it disturbs me because you're implying this kind of apartheid myth that Carter is propagating, and it's not at all true.
It is not at all true, and we don't hear enough about that, unfortunately. What I see, part of this was done with your Israeli friends know who they are and what they're doing. What I hear here is I'm pro-Israel, that means I'm against the Palestinians, or I'm pro-Palestine, which means I'm against the state of Israel, and nobody's going anywhere. And that dialogue, level of discourse needs to go away. We need to come to terms with the fact that nobody's going anywhere and start thinking of solutions. And we don't hear enough about that kind of work and that level of living. And it is very basic, and it's what I feel that is lacking here. And I'm as sorry as you are that I feel like it's lacking, and I feel like I have to say it because I don't think enough people know that. Something so simple.
Any more questions? I have a question. So, what do you think the difference between, if there is one, between photojournalism and art and photography for the kind that you're doing? What's the difference between those?
They overlap in a lot of ways. The main difference is if you're a photojournalist, you work for a paper. The paper has its agenda. It has to sell papers, sensationalist pictures. Sell more papers. Your editor is owned by somebody and has to answer to them and can or cannot put certain things in there. And a lot of photojournalistic pictures are art, but only time can tell that. Those pictures that you can relate to, regardless of the context that they were taken in, the pictures that stay around, that move people, that's art. You can't go and try to make it. You don't know.
Is there anybody else has a question? Last call. No? Is there anything you want to say? What's happening?
Just again, thank you all for coming, and there's a lot of work to be done. Thank you, Itamar.
Okay. Hi everyone. Just wanted to take a couple of minutes to present who we are and what we tried to make this event about. So bear with me. I wrote a little something here. Thank you all for coming to Eyes on Activism, celebrating social change in Israel through the visual arts. I want to take another minute to thank all the people who helped put this event together and give them a hand. They did a great job. And thanks to FSM for sponsoring it. But let's get to what went on today at the event. What was the point of today? Why did we put this event on? Today, our new organization, Kesher Enoshi, Progressives for Activism in Israel, tried to bring you face to face with the people that are dedicated to asking the difficult questions facing their complex society. And yes, they are questions, not answers. They are going beyond the oppression many of them have experienced. They are going beyond their victimization, taking control of their image and of their lives through their struggles. These people are struggling simultaneously to understand their society and to change it. And so are we. Students on this campus who want to take the commitment we feel towards the communities that comprise Israeli society and to channel it towards engaging with progressive social change movements there. What do we mean when we say engagement? We mean that we are dedicated to establishing an open-ended conversation, a free flow of ideas, but not only ideas, but also ideas grounded in and happening with action. We mean a conversation aimed at social change. It is an exchange of questions and suggestions for action between people dedicated to making the world a better place, but starting with the communities closest to them. The activists in Israel with their communities and us with our own. Our goal, simply put, is to create a human connection, a Kesher Enoshi, between here and there. Our struggle is twofold: to engage directly with organizations in Israel and simultaneously to engage our own communities about the pressing issues outlined by those organizations. The end result of that engagement is open-ended, but its open-endedness does not stop us from acting. We struggle by discussing the work of these organizations and then acting on that knowledge, then discussing again. And through this struggle, we hope to build a community of people dedicated to exploring and furthering the human connection with the people of Israel. We represent no one but ourselves, decide nothing without discussion, and take nothing for granted except for our passion for social justice and our connection to the people of Israel. Our group believes in the power of an engagement driven by human rights to spill over, to spread to other communities and other issues, disregarding of any lines that separate one person from another, be they ethnic, national, religious, or ideological. We believe that the future of our world in general, and our region in particular, depends on establishing a human connection Whether you have a special connection to the people of Israel or not, I hope you enjoyed learning about a faraway example of activism close up. And I hope that some of you will find the time to work with us next semester and contribute to the discussion that drives our organization. Thank you.